Hello and welcome to Your Property Podcast. My name is Michelle Cairns from YPN, and today I am back with Saj Hussain. Hi Saj, how's it going?
Hey Michelle, I'm very good. Thank you so much.
It's great to have you on. I'll just do a quick bio for people who don't know about you already. I can't imagine there's many people, to be honest, but if you don't know about Saj, he is a very successful property entrepreneur and also well known as the property joint venture expert. Since 2007, he's built a multi-million-pound property portfolio, and now he uses his time, skills, and experience to find great investment opportunities and partner up with cash-rich investors to create a fantastic return on investment. So to be honest, Saj, I got that from your website, a quick bio, but I know there's a lot more going on than just that. If we can't even say just that, there's a lot going on for you and your business right now, and has been for many years. So you are well known in the property education circles, as well as people who are looking for mentors as well. So you come across a lot of people who are just starting out, and of course I forgot to mention you work with our YPN total sourcing program as well, so you are the lead expert on that. And whether it's through our programs or your programs, or of course your networking meeting as well, you come across a lot of new people. So let's dive in with new people coming in right now. So where can they start? I know that's a big question, but I get asked this every day. Yes. Where do I start? And how do you answer that question when people ask you?
Yeah, it's one of those questions which is, as you said, it's so often asked as the first question. Oh, I've just got a quick question. Can you just tell me, how do I get started? Or where do I start? Or should I just do this strategy? And you think, that's a really short question, but it wants a very long answer. It really depends. And it depends on many, many things. Often people are drawn into property because ultimately it's one of those things where you can make exuberant amounts of money from property. And there's multiple strategies and many techniques that you can use in order to do that. And so often the thing that brings people into property in the first place is they've either seen somebody else do something, or they've heard somebody has done something, and that's what draws them into property. And they think, oh, I could do with a little bit of that. And the assumption is that I'll just do what they did. Well, actually, we don't know where that other person started from, what journey they went through, what advantages they might have had, what challenges they might have faced in order to get to where they are right now. And sometimes we see people sharing their journey, their experiences, people on stage, people we look up to, but it can be a little bit of an iceberg. We just see the tip, we see those results, but we don't see everything underneath that's gone on in order for them to get there. And when we're trying to answer the question of where do you get started, it's really trying to factor all those things in. And I have a kind of 10-step process. I'm probably not going to remember all of it from memory, but I'll try and dip into the key things that I think are relevant when you're starting. It's a little bit like doing a SWOT analysis on yourself and say, look, well, I need to take stock first of where I am, think about where I want to get to and what's going to be that gap. So when we talk about where we are right now, so someone's getting started in property, it's really how much time are they looking to be able to put into property, what money they might have available right now. For example, in savings, it might be stuff, a property they can refinance. It might be to the contact connections that might be willing to invest with them. So it's access to funds rather than just liquid cash sitting in their account. You know, what other experiences that they have that are related to property? Do they have some experience? Do they work in a sector that might have some transferable skills? So, for example, let's say somebody works in the IT space and they're a project manager and they're interested in getting into property. Well, we think on the surface of it, it doesn't look like there might be any relevant or transferable skills. But actually, project management is not that different in IT than it is in terms of property. We're managing people, we're managing processes, whether it's managing builders or managing outcomes. So there are some transferable skills that we can think about. And then it's leveraging what contacts and resources do we already have. So, for example, my neighbor's brother is a builder. Could I tap into that, for example? So these are the things we often don't think about. And what I like to do is to try and work these things out to see, let's just take stock of where we are and thinking about where we want to get started in property. So, for example, we're in Birmingham. I think it's the best place to possibly ever live. I think it's amazing here. Somebody else might be outside, living in a nice, quiet village somewhere. And you think, well, actually, if I get started here, what's going to be the opportunity? Then you've got the challenges of living in and around London in terms of the value of property and getting started in property. You've got all those challenges. So it may not be practical to do property where you live. Personally, I think it's the best place to start. Look at where you already live. You know the area, you have an understanding. You know which is that quiet street you would not walk down on your own on a quiet night. And somebody outside of the area doesn't know that. They don't have that knowledge. So can you leverage what you already know in that way? And if not, then if you have to pick something further away, think about how easy is it going to be for you to get there, to visit those properties, to do the viewings, to meet the builders at those locations. And do you have any prior knowledge? Maybe you went to university in a certain town, at least there's some understanding of that area, maybe some friends there, maybe some relatives that live somewhere. So there's a few things. I said there's like 10 points that I tend to work through. There's a few I've just shared as an example that we need to think about. Take stock first of where we are. Then we have to consider what is it we're trying to achieve from property. And for me personally, I think there's really 3 buckets, as I call it, that you make money from when it comes to property. You're either creating cash flow, which is reoccurring income each and every month. And that's often going to be things like HMOs, serviced accommodation, sourcing property. These are high income generators, these sort of strategies. These are the kind of things that people will often want to do when they are either looking to get out of a job, part replace a salary, or transition, because there's sufficient income that can come on a reoccurring basis. Alternatively, it might be that they want to cash out of a property, meaning that they have a one-time event. They maybe renovate a property and sell it on for profit, and they get paid once from that property, and they build up their capital. So somebody might already be working and they're allocating a little bit of time to property. They've got some funds. They just want to grow that pot of cash, first of all. So they might be looking at strategies that suit kind of cashing out. And then the third bucket is the equity bucket. And that's the one that many people tend to think about, but often is not the right one for most people. And the equity one is where you are building up profit within the property, but you're not able to access it today. It's for the future. So your traditional buy-to-let model, which actually today, when you look at buy-to-let, it still works as a strategy. You put a deposit down, you rent the property out. You'll generate a small return on that. When you take into consideration your management, maybe some voids, possibly some repairs, maybe a tenant change once in the year, you're probably going to get wiped out in terms of profit that you're left with. You're not really making any money from buy-to-let. But if we roll the clock back 20, 30, even 40 years ago, why were people buying buy-to-let? Well, some of it was cash flow at the time, but depending on what the interest rates were at the time. But often it was because of realization over time that property is going to be worth significantly more than it is today. Now, we still believe that's probably going to be the case. In 10, 20 years from now, we think property is still going to be worth significantly more than it is today. So if we're using an equity type strategy, this is really going to suit somebody who's maybe a high earner who doesn't really need more money right now today. So more money today is not really going to change their lifestyle. They're trying to build something for the future. It might be a legacy, it might be a pension plan. So when we think about the 3 ways to make money from property, either cash flow, cashing out, or equity, we've understood where we are. We understood there's 3 different techniques. Now we can start formulating which might be the right strategy for somebody. And often all this process gets skipped because we see somebody doing rent service accommodation. I'm thinking, I'd like a piece of that. And we don't think about whether it might be a good fit for us, or if it's going to work for us, or we're going to be a good fit for that particular strategy. A long-winded answer, but hopefully that was useful.
That was great. Thank you. Very eloquent. And I agree with everything you said there. And to touch on what you said at the end about people often see these strategies, and let's say service accommodation, think, right, that's it. But they are often just seeing one piece of a very big puzzle. And it's only when they go into it, they think, oh, okay. And then they start understanding all the other elements to it. And then they think, okay, well, I'm not sure if this is for me, because look at HMOs, they're great, or look at supported living, that's great. So then they get very confused by all these different strategies. Whereas what you're saying is like, first start off with the fundamentals of how to make money from property and understand what's out there, and then you can make an informed decision. But I suppose people, they don't know what they don't know, right? So some people often just jump in right in the middle without understanding everything that's involved, which is, fine. It gets them to where they need to be eventually, right? So, okay. And so once people have understood the fundamentals, what are some practical tips that you can give for, okay, the next month, what should people do in the next month? They, might have some, this recording is in August, and they might have some kind of downtime with the kids and a bit of headspace, or not. But over the next month, let's say, what can people do to get started?
What I would suggest that the next kind of step is, once you've understood, okay, maybe I want cash flow, I want to look for reoccurring income each month, because vast majority of people, that's a route they want to take. Few people want to build the cash pot, and there tends to be even few people that want to build for the long term. It doesn't mean none of these things are not relevant. They're all important, but it's just which one for which person. And it doesn't mean you can't do all three, but it's usually one that's driving it. And let's say it's cash flow, so that will maybe narrow it down to HMOs, service accommodation, or sourcing property. So if it's those three things, then what I would start doing is some what I call surface knowledge. Surface knowledge, start understanding the basics of how these things work. How does it also work in your area? Who else is already doing this? So for example, if you're interested in HMOs, we can jump onto Rightmove, we can have a look at who else is advertising a room to rent right now. If I go onto Spare Room, if I needed a room for me or my friend's niece who's moving up to Birmingham, I need to find them a room. What's in the marketplace? Put myself in the shoes of the customer to understand the customer's journey, or what's available, what are the products, how are they positioned, how are they priced. Then based on that, I could look at, right, now if I was going to purchase a property, what type of buildings similar to that are currently available? And I can look at what sort of price point they are. Now, this is very surface level what we're doing. This is not going into any detail. We're just trying to understand the environment a little bit better, and the locality in terms of what works there. See who else operates in that place, what type of buildings that they have. And then when we can look at some numbers, what's it cost to buy that building? We can do some guesstimation on what it might cost to convert or improve the property to get it to the kind of product we want to create. What kind of income will that generate? Then, of course, we also need to look at the operating environment. For example, are there factors like Article 4 that might restrict just taking a family house and converting it? Is there any planning approval that needs to be required? So this can already, just at this level, it can start getting very confusing and very overwhelming before we've even actually taken a step, because as you mentioned earlier, we often don't know what we don't know. Then I think once we've got a little bit of a surface understanding, what we really should be doing is then trying to tap into the brains of people that have some knowledge and expertise, particularly people locally around us. Hence why I'm such a big fan of networking, have been for many, many years, is try and find other people locally to us that may be doing a similar kind of thing. Now, my background was in IT. I did IT for about 14 years before I got into property. And when we wanted that machine to talk to that machine and that printer to send something over there, we'd say, can you write the check, please? And I'll organize it. We didn't share information very readily. That was my experience. But in property, people are very open, very helpful, and often share. And I was just amazed when I first got involved in property, probably about 17, 18 years ago now, where how helpful people were. They're quite open with their knowledge. Now, you might occasionally find somebody who's got a little bit of an agenda. They don't necessarily want to share. They're thinking, oh, more competition. I don't necessarily want to tell them what I'm doing. But that's quite rare. Generally, people are fairly open to start understanding. Now, let's say, I don't know, let's pick a random town. I was going to go up to Doncaster, and I thought Doncaster was the place that I should be looking to invest because it doesn't work where I am right now. Well, then one of the things I could do is arrange some time to go out and look at some properties on the one day that I'm going to be there. Buy that in when there's a local networking meeting going on. Also message the host beforehand and ask them a little bit about the meeting and say you'd like to come, and would it be possible maybe even meet them for coffee? And why would we want to connect with the host? Well, the host often is the one that's most well-connected person in the room. They know most of the people in their room. If you can get 10, 15 minutes with the host of a networking event, they can often then point you in the direction of who you should talk to next. And this is really it's a pure networking goal for me, because you find one person, they open 3 more doors for you, and you go off to talk to those 3 people, and they're very targeted and very relevant. Now, of course, some of this we can also do online as well, or social networking as well. But personally, I think nothing beats meeting somebody, sitting down with them, having a coffee with them, and having a chat. And this is shortcutting the learning process of understanding how the strategies work, the practicalities of them. So, for instance, you might meet somebody who's got 30 HMOs in a certain area and think, oh, I'd love to do that. And you went to sit down and talk to them and says, well, they turn around and say, well, I'd never do that today. And you think, why? Well, firstly, you can't buy the property at the same price that they bought them 30 years ago, so they wouldn't make any sense trying to get the numbers to work. And there could be many other factors as well. But we wouldn't know that just by seeing what somebody does. It's by sitting down and talking to them and understanding how they work in a practical environment today. So essentially, it's about some basic knowledge accumulation, surface level understanding, and then sitting down with people who have some understanding of those particular strategies to see if they're going to be right for us. That would be what I would consider the kind of next step, the first month of activity, if you like.
Yeah. Well, while we're talking about networking, do you want to just briefly plug for your networking meetings?
Yes, so I run a networking
very successful.
Thank you. I run a networking event in Birmingham. We've been running networking events probably 10, 11 years now. I think it's coming up to. And in fact, it's 12 years. I was just thinking about it. It's nearly 12 years we've been running networking events pretty much every month. And the idea is bringing like-minded people together to connect and share knowledge and experience, just like we've been talking about right now. And to find out more about my one, you can just look on our website, sajhussain.com/networking. It's the third Tuesday of the month we have our meetings, usually up to about 200 people at that.
Great. Well, yeah, find out about that in the show notes. Okay, so we've got the networking, we've got some practical tips there, and you just mentioned before about how if you're having conversation with somebody and they are, let's say they are currently successful in property because they followed certain strategies, I think you touched on a really important point that just because they have followed a certain path, that might not be applicable right now. So that's why I think it's important for people not to not to kind of get carried away with people's advice, because it's very time sensitive. Yes. Especially with property in the markets and interest rates and so many different factors, whereas asking questions, they are timeless, right? Because then you can assess the situation based on the question. So rather than kind of giving people advice, do you have any questions that people can ask themselves to say, like, let's say 2 or 3 questions, how can people assess what's right for them right now?
This is a question they would ask somebody else, or asking of themselves?
Yeah, of asking of themselves.
Okay. So I would say one of the things that we realize quite quickly in property, as we touched on earlier, there's lots and lots of different ways to make money from property. And quite often it means that's shiny penny syndrome. There's just lots and lots of distractions as well. And it's very difficult to stay focused. And also, most strategies are actually fairly easy in the sense that they're fairly simple in the way they work, but they're not easy to do, meaning actually they require a lot of work. So the rewards in property can be very high, but actually there's a pain barrier to go through first in order to get the result. And many people don't have that threshold. They give up very, very quickly. So one of the first questions I ask of myself, if I start at, say, why is it I want to do this? Why is this going to be important to me? Because there's going to be lots of challenges along the way. It's not going to be a walk in the park. And I've got to have something that's going to keep me pushing forward, keep driving me, even on the days where the builders have let you down, the investors change their mind, the solicitors telling you there's a major problem with that purchase you're trying to do, the lenders decide they're going to pull on the day of offer. And so these things are not unusual. They happen in property. And there'll be days that you just want to find that quilt and just not get out of bed and say, leave me alone. And it's a roller coaster ride. And so when it's up, it's fantastic. It's great. We're buzzing. We're loving it. But there are going to be days as well where it's going to be challenging. It's going to be hard. It's going to be, we're going to question why we're here. And if we have a strong reason why we're doing this, driving us, pushing us forward, whatever that reason might be, and if it's a deep, important reason to you, it will keep you going. So I would start with why is it important and what's going to keep you going when you face those tough times, which in property, you definitely will. It's not a walk in the park.
And let's flip it around then. So if you were starting out now and you wanted to find out about what was the right strategy for you right now, what would you ask of a mentor or people that you meet who seem successful in property?
So if I answer that in a slightly different way, it's what would be a good starting point. Okay. Because if I'm starting again right now, even if I lost everything, as long as I got my brain, I have the knowledge, the contacts, connections, so I could do the process a lot quicker. Most people can't, so it's probably less relevant. But if I was starting out, the skill that I would focus on developing is the ability to be able to find deals. For me, I think that's the fundamental skill. But it doesn't matter whether you choose rent to service accommodation, HMOs, flipping properties, lease option development. It doesn't matter which strategy you choose. You have to have the ability to be able to find and negotiate and secure those deals. And of course, there's the underlying skills around that, being able to appraise and assess them as well. And if we're not able to do those things well, we're always going to be struggling to find deals. We're always going to be relying on somebody else to bring something to us. Whereas if we understand how to find them, how to negotiate them, what turns into a good deal, and where we are probably sensible to walk away and not get emotionally involved, learning those basic skills, I think, is the absolute core skill. And then, as you said, the environment's constantly changing. The environment's changing all the time. There's a little phrase I like: the only certainty in property is constant change. There is no certainty; it's just evolving and changing all the time. And now we have a new government. Recently, they want to make changes within the property sector, and I keep seeing little emails popping up from various property sites about things that are possibly happening, possibly changing. Like I saw one this morning about how capital gains tax may impact the market, and landlords might start abandoning. And all of the, if we were going to believe all these things that we hear, we'd probably just run away from property and not do anything. But what we have to recognize, things are going to change. We've got to be ready to adapt as well. Now, that doesn't mean we jump and flip-flop around between strategies, but we have to be nimble and agile enough to be able to maneuver a little bit if things change, so we can change as well with that market. So, for example, we had a good size business in service accommodation. We still operate service accommodation. As the market started to change, we downsized it slightly for a period of time whilst we create more certainty around what's going to happen going forward. So, for example, there might be new planning classes, etc. So we're waiting for all that to trickle through before we put a foot on the gas again and go forward. So in the meantime, we've just kind of downsized a little bit, and rents are very high as well right now. So some properties, actually just on regular rents, are producing really good profit as well. So that's what I mean by just being a little bit nimble and agile enough to be able to adapt what's going on in the market. So learning the basic skills of being able to find deals, I think, is a core starting point. And then thinking about, right, if I, for example, want cash flow, well, if I want a HMO, what are my options? Well, I can take on a regular 4-bedroom house. I can take on something that's probably properly converted to maybe 6 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, or something a bit bigger. Well, if I purchase any of those, I can either buy an existing one, which is really just a passive investment because I'm just buying an investment, or I'm going to have to go and create one where I need the knowledge on how to do it, and I need the money to be able to do it as well. I need to understand how the financing works on the exit end to be able to make that work. Or it might be, well, I haven't got the funds to do that. Well, now I either need to look for somebody who might want to work with me as maybe a funding partner, or maybe I can do a rent to HMO model, which is going to be a lower barrier to entry.
And what do you think people miss if they are starting out, that maybe they just don't the penny doesn't drop, or a concept that they, or an area of property that you think, gosh, I see so many people starting out and they're just missing this really obvious thing that stands out?
Yeah, there's something that comes on smiling, so it comes to my mind straight away when you say that. And I think that's when we are trying to force deals to work. And what that means is what we see a property which looks interesting, and we start getting emotionally involved into it. We're thinking, oh, yes,
excited,
we're thinking, oh, we can do this, and this is going to be able to do this. And then what we do, we start tinkering with the numbers and forcing the numbers to fit. Well, actually, I know it doesn't quite work if the rents are 700. But what if we were able to get 800? Hey, we could get it to work then, but the rents aren't 800. So how is that going to work? So we start forcing the deal to fit. And often I say, look, what we need to be focusing on when we're looking for deals, particularly, we need to be looking for people that are what we class as motivated sellers, people that are keen to sell. And they're either going to be flexible in the price. That means we can negotiate a bit of a deal day one. As we go into the property, we've locked in some equity profit day one. So we've got a little bit of safety net there. We've got a bit of a buffer. Or they're going to be flexible with us in the way we put the deal together, the terms around that particular deal. And those two things, what creates us profit straight away. Either the way we control the property, or we're buying it at some kind of discount. So if we're buying for somebody that's keen to sell, then we are much more likely to be able to get a deal rather than seeing something which looks interesting and then trying to force the numbers to work. And I think that's the thing that for me seems obvious. I say it's a numbers game. You can't get emotionally involved. If someone says no, it's okay, thank you very much, next, and move on. And you just put it into a follow-up sequence. And I was putting together a bit of a flow chart for one of our trainings just earlier today. And I was thinking, actually, this is, for us, this has been so important in our business, where we're speaking to a seller or we're trying to negotiate a deal, and the initial answer is, no, that doesn't work because our proposal doesn't suit their needs, even though we've tried to understand as much as we can, but it needs to be commercially viable for us as well. But the number of those that turn into a deal further down the road, there's probably about half the deals that we do today initially started off as the seller saying no, or the agent not being able to structure the deal for us. And it's come back at some point. So we've just got used to this follow-up sequence and we almost don't think about it, but it's so important and such an integral part of our business. So if someone says, no, it doesn't work, that's fine. You park it into a follow-up sequence and you make sure you stay in touch with them and follow up with that and you move on to the next thing. And you just keep going. It's a numbers business. I remember when we were doing leafleting back in the day, the kind of leaflets people see through the letterbox when it says, sell your house fast for cash, those type of leaflets. I was getting out about 100,000 leaflets at a time. I'd literally have a pallet dropped off and then we'd work out, well, not me personally, then I'd organize the leaflets to get out and get those distributed. So we've been doing batches of 15, 20,000 leaflets a month, or sometimes 25,000 leaflets would go out in a month. Now, even that's not a lot of leafleting. But sometimes I'll speak to somebody and they say, yeah, I kind of get a leaflet to go. I said, tell me about that. How many I posted about 800 leaflets and I didn't get any calls. I said, oh, okay, really? So it's these things are about having a plan, and you need to do a little bit of testing, then it's go on scale. So when you're doing your lead generation, your chasing leads, whichever method you're using, whether it's agent, sources, you're doing direct vendor, whatever methodology you're using, it needs to be something that has a process and it's scalable as well, because that's what's going to get the results. Dipping your toe is not going to get you a great result.
Great tips. Okay, and to wrap up then, so you've been a mentor for a number of years, and people can come and work with you in different capacities. What sort of level do you think is appropriate for people to come and work with you? Like, do you work with people who are brand new, or is it more kind of once they're a bit more established or they've got some experience already and then want to go to the next level?
Yeah, I think there's kind of three phases of people that tend to be in our environment, our network. Those that are brand new that haven't started at all. Those that are doing some property but getting a little bit stuck and they're just not able to progress very quickly or onto the next stage. And those that are very, very experienced. So the very, very experienced is a small category of those. I'll put myself in that category where we're almost kind of learning from each other, or they're doing something different from me and we're kind of helping each other. And then those that have some experience and they're just getting stuck, maybe it's a strategy, they've just got into a rut, or they don't know how to kind of change what they're doing or move into another strategy. Those people we can make a massive difference to. But the way I see those, they're already going, and we just need to make a few tweaks and we can get them going much quicker. The people that are brand new, I also work with as well, if I'm being honest. I feel the most frustration and pain there because when people are new, it's sometimes it's really about getting people to be realistic about what they're going to be able to do with what resources and things they have and how much they're willing to put in times and effort as well to get the output that they want, and then sticking to that strategy, because often a lot of strategies are a little bit slow starting to build the momentum, and unfortunately a lot of people give up. So I tend to be really picky when someone's new. I say, look, I scare them off at the beginning. I say, look, you've got to have all these things. As long as you're willing to do all these things, we can work together. And if you're a little bit flaky, then I might not be the person for you. As I said, there's huge rewards in property, but you've got to be prepared to put the effort in. As long as you're willing to do that, there's no glass ceiling in this business.
Absolutely. And finally, obviously, you work with us in the total sourcing community, and as part of that program, you are our lead trainer. So you teach people how to source deals, how to package them up. And of course, you said that one of your specialities and one is actually sourcing. And over the years, you've learned so much about the whole packaging process, and it's great to have you on board to be able to share your experience with our members. But you said the number one skill that you think people should learn when they're starting out is how to source, how to find deals, how to appraise them and package them up, whether it's, for them to take on themselves or sell on. So as part of the group, how do you see that? Because it's not necessarily a strategy like HMO or service accommodation. Actually, the focus is around finding deals and either funding them or selling them on. So why do you think that is important to actually commit to in terms of, a good place to start for people who are wanting to get into property?
Yes, as you said, Michelle, it's not a strategy. It's really more of an underlining skill that you need to have. And you can get buying property without learning this skill. It means you're going to be paying other people to do this for you, and generally fairly handsomely to do that. And I myself have paid up to £25,000 for a deal that we've acquired. Now we've made substantial profits from that, so it makes sense. But what I'm saying is the person who's gone through the effort of finding securing it can get paid really well for it. And if you're able to do that yourself, then you're definitely going to be in a stronger position. There's also a bit of a misconception when we talk about sourcing. People think you're finding deals and passing them to somebody else. But actually, what we should be doing, we should be mastering the skill. Good deals that we come across, we should sell them on. Sell them on for a fee, £3,000, £5,000, £8,000, whatever it might be, depending on what the deal and what the opportunity is. And then occasionally we'll come across outstanding deals. Those are the ones we should not be selling. Those ones should be taken off the table and should be doing those yourself, because they're the ones that are going to make you 20, 30, 50, £100,000 on those deals. So even if you're doing one or two of those a year. So when we think about learning this type of skill of finding the deals, and when we talk about finding, it's some of it's a marketing skill. How do you generate those leads in the first place? Then how do you structure and start those conversations? How is it that you can get the seller to give you the information that you need, or via the agent or a third party like a sourcer, in order for you to construct a deal that could work for them and for you to be able to create profit as well? Because when we look at a deal and we look at the numbers, it can be presented in so many different ways. And often when we are looking at deals, we're thinking, right, that's what it's worth to me, that's what I'm willing to pay. Well, that might be what you want, but we haven't taken time to understand what they may want. And the more we can understand about our seller and their situation, their circumstances, the much more likelihood we are that we be able to construct some kind of deal that's going to meet their needs, and we'll be able to get that to move forward. Of course, we haven't talked about when you do deals, probably about 1 in 3 fall out of bed. The kind of stats that we see typically within the property sales world, whether it's estate agents, or sourcing, whatever it might be. And that's because something has changed from the time a deal was agreed before you got to completion. But the more you are in tune with what the seller wants, you are increasing your chances to getting that deal across the line. So not only are you developing a skill, but the leverage that you've got on that skill is much higher as well. So by learning the skill, you're developing really people skills. That's ultimately what it's about. Property is a people business. It's not about the bricks and mortar. It is all about people that are working with you, whether it's a seller, an agent, a builder, a professional like a solicitor, an architect. It's all other people that you need to be able to pull together to be able to get what you want. So that's why I see it as a really core fundamental skill. I say it doesn't really matter what strategy you choose. You should learn this skill, and you should be constantly refining it and polishing it and getting better and better. Whether you're brand new and just starting out, whether you've got some experience and you're just kind of not quite getting the deals, or even if you're very experienced and you're just not getting the deals that you want right now, just revisiting some of the core principles can make a huge difference in your business.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that you just touched on there about these skills that are, not necessarily about the numbers and the figures and the bricks and the mortar and Article 4 and all of this kind of, these factual things that we can learn, but it is also about those softer skills, negotiating, how to work with investors, and the power team, whether that's your solicitors or agents or whoever it is. It's understanding and honing those skills like marketing and as well, wearing lots of hats.
Yes, if I can jump in, one of the things you just mentioned there, we talk about investors. Now, when we talk about sourcing and finding and negotiating, we talk about finding a property that we want to acquire. But actually, the skills are not that dissimilar when we're looking for an investor, somebody to invest with us or somebody to sell the deal. So actually, these skills, although we're talking specifically around the aspect of finding deals, they are very, very similar when it comes to looking for investors or fund deals with us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if anyone wants to find out more about our total sourcing program, about Saj, about what he's up to, the networking meeting and his mentorship, then all of the links will be in the show notes. So that just leaves me to say thank you for your time, Saj, and it's been great to have you on.
Thanks so much, Michelle. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Great. And thanks to everyone for joining us today and listening to our podcast. As ever, if you would like a free 30-day trial of our YPM membership, then click the link in the show notes for that. And we look forward to speaking to you next time. Take care, guys.